Okay, so I think we're recording. Hopefully, we're recording. It says we're recording. So I'm gonna get started. We do have 2 hours, but we're probably gonna use the first hour for just kind of going through step by step how to do stuff, and then the second hour is gonna be optional. So feel free to just kind of head out if you need to, or stick around and kind of experiment and draw with what we're kind of gonna go over in the next couple minutes, or next hour, I should say. So just starting off, I thought I'd go over some stuff really quick. So who here did not bring uh, a laptop device? Well, okay, we got one. It's not a big deal if you didn't. We're gonna be doing some pixel art, so we have some options for everybody. I know I said laptop recommended because it is. Here's a bunch of different art softwares you can use today. I'm gonna recommend a couple just off the bat. Um, Mainly, probably Paint.net is the big one, and maybe low spec. We're probably not going to be doing a lot of animation work, so um, many of these are going to be okay. I do not recommend, even though it is totally still an option, Piskel app. I was doing that earlier because I thought, oh, this would be a good one that I would kind of use, and then everybody would kind of follow me and be a free app that everybody could use. Piskel's horrible, it turns out. So if you can, refrain from using this because this is in a web browser. This is an app. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about some just kind of pixel art concepts when people download stuff. If you need to look at this in more in depth, I have this on the Discord under announcements. I have a couple download links on there. You guys can check that out. And that should kind of give you the option to download some stuff if you need to. If you need to do something really quick or you don't think you're going to have time to download it or you're having issues, then just use Piskel. It's totally fine. I just hate it. So don't worry about it. All right. And we'll help you guys troubleshoot if you have any issues as well. So I'm going to move on to kind of some pixel art concepts before we kind of officially get started. So, pixel art, right? Here are a couple examples of a couple good things to do in pixel art. So you've got a couple lines. A couple things you might want to notice is like the symmetry of the lines. So obviously the straight line, it's symmetrical down the middle because it's just one set of pixels. But here you have these kind of um, diagonal lines, and they're symmetrical if you flip them over the x and y axis, right? A couple things with these last two is that they're very consistent. So you've got 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, and then 1 pixel, 2 pixel, so on and so forth. And we got a straight flat line with these curvatures, with the kind of curved boxes, edges, and stuff like that. These are also very consistent as well, and you can see it looks rounded. Even though we're using tiny squares, it looks rounded, kind of like a circle. Couple things of what not to do. All right, these should look pretty obvious. I know some people are going to roll their eyes, but you don't want like jittery going back and forth. It's fine because it's pixel art to do this when you're doing your kind of rough draft and you're just kind of sketching stuff out. But when you're finished with your pixel art piece, you shouldn't have any of that unless you're trying to make it look bad on purpose. We'll show you some examples in the future. Another thing that a bunch of pixel artists do when they're just starting out is they do something called doubling up on lines. So you're going to see here I have these marked with green kind of boxes. And what you want to do is you want to eliminate them so it's just the white line. You don't want any kind of doubling of pixels on those lines. If you're using a really nice pixel art editor, so I know one thing that I suggested was Sprite. That's what I'm using right now. You actually have an option if you go to the drawing tool called Pixel Perfect up at the top, right? So this little box, if you check it and I draw, no matter how much I try to double up on a line, it's not going to let me, right? It's always going to stop. If I turn it off and I try to draw, it's going to let me double up in some places, right? So anyway, down here, I mean, you can do stuff like this, but it's not recommended to do stuff like this unless you're trying to get kind of like a flatter shape. If you're trying to do rounding, try to do stuff like up here. I don't know how to describe it. I just figured it'd be better to kind of show it. There are some kind of special cases where you can kind of get away with it, like when I drew the controller kind of here in this kind of area, you can see I did a straight flat line. So there's exceptions to all of these rules, but for the most part, when you're starting off, those are really good things to follow. Next thing, lighting. Okay, so lighting is just a really great thing to know in art in general. So I'm just going to hit this really quickly. Um, if you've got something like a box and you've got this arrow showing the light source, if it's hitting the top of the box, then the top of the box is obviously going to be the brightest. The next brightest side is going to be this side, so on and so forth. For pixel art, it's really good to keep it consistent where one side of the box is always the brightest and another side is dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. You don't want to have two sides of the same brightness because they're going to kind of blur together. Um, and you can see a really good example of that if you just look up like pixel art rocks. They are really good with like all the different angles, always have a different shade of lighting so that way you can see all the different angles of the rock. That's a really good example to kind of look at if you need kind of brainstorming ideas, stuff like that. Next, I've just got kind of like an example here with another thing with lighting. So this is an example of when you can use two shades on the same thing. These are both equidistant on both sides here from the light source. So these are going to be the same shade. And then obviously this one's the furthest, it's going to be the darkest. That should be pretty obvious there. And then you've got a ball, a sphere. And you can see light source hit it from the top. The arrow's off a little bit, but you can see how you can kind of draw shades, kind of draw rings going down for balls and spheres and stuff like that. Okay, so moving on. So this is kind of the more complicated stuff. We're going to kind of skip around. So we've got the three basic steps when you're going to be drawing pixel art. So as with most kind of art stuff, you want to start off with like a very simple base, maybe some very simple shading. This is just kind of like sketch something out really quickly, do some simple shading so you get the kind of the idea, and then you can move on to outlining, which is going to be, you just draw an outline around it, right? Maybe add a little bit more detail. As you can see with Sai here, I added like a darker black to his kind of facial feathers here because it matches with the outline. It just looks good, right? And you can see kind of stuff like that and you kind of experiment with that kind of stuff. All right, and the final step is to shade even the outline, right? So you do the first step where you kind of just do the base. The second step is you outline it. Maybe you add a little bit more shading. And the final step is you just shade everything. The most important part I want to show with the kind of pixel art outline is that I shaded the outline where there's only just two colors that I'm alternating between them. I've got a darker color here, and then where the light's hitting, the line is a little bit lighter. That's about it. But the outline is always darker than the colors that are being used for the main body. So that's just something good to keep in mind. And then at the bottom, we've got just a couple examples of like stylistically how these have been used. So you don't have to do everything through the shading. You can just kind of start off with like really simple stuff and you can stick with the really simple stuff. So we've got like Mario and Link, I almost said Zelda there, from like some old NES games. We've got some Super Nintendo characters here in the middle. And they just use the base. We got Mega Man, he's an NES character as well, but they used outlining. And then you've got the shaded characters, which look really crisp. And that's kind of how you can do some really detailed kind of sprite work and pixel art stuff. Personally, I do a lot of just the base pixel art. And I'm going to self-plug in a little bit, but you can get away with that pretty easily. Okay, so last year, this is kind of what we did for a workshop. It was really simple. We just picked one thing and we went through it really quickly. This was a spaceship, so somebody gave me a spaceship and then we kind of drew it out really quickly. So we've got the base again, an outline, whoop, keep doing that. And then the shading, right? So just kind of get a closer look at that. And that was just kind of really simple going through it. And we're going to do that today in a little bit, but just as a disclaimer, I mainly do base stuff. So if we do go into shading, we do go into that kind of stuff that isn't really my area of expertise. I will admit I usually do stuff like this, which is all done in base, right? We aren't doing a ton of shading there. It's very simplistic kind of pixel art. And then the current game I'm working on right now is black and white, all right? There's no shading at all whatsoever. So as you can see, I wanted to give the example of the rocks really quickly here. I have just where the light's hitting it, and then I have where the light's not hitting it. And then you have the lines dividing in between. So that's a way to do it with only just two colors. If you ever want to get a sprite, I don't know. Back when I bought it, it was only like $7 because I bought it in development. But I think you can get it on, we might be able to get it through a Steam sale. So that's the best way to get Ace Sprite. Um, I think it's up to like 15 now, but if you're gonna get like seriously into pixel art, it is hands down the best piece of pixel art software I've ever used. And that's mainly just because of like the animation tools are really nice. We're probably not gonna get into animating today. It sounds a little bit advanced, but the animation tools are really nice if you're really serious about it. Okay. All right, so we're going to start just kind of moving on here just because we do not have a ton of time and we have a lot to draw. So I am going to make a new sprite and I'm going to make it huge. I'm going to make 300 by 300. You don't have to make it that big, maybe like 150 to 200 pixels is a good starting point. And that's just because I like to draw everything on one screen at once. I don't like to have to draw multiple different sprites, and that's mainly just because we're going to be drawing like a massive area, a massive tile map, and I just want to be able to draw everything, see how it all looks together, keep everything consistent. So yeah, 300 by 300 is a really good idea. Ignore all the stuff below it. If you have the option using the free version of Sprite, I would recommend it, but by no means is it required. I don't know. I've never used them before. Ooh, what is this? All right, don't worry about that. I think you just increase the pixel size if you're drawing more complicated stuff. Okay, so we've got this massive canvas, right? And if I just start drawing with like a big pen, whoop, it's a lot of pixels, right? So we're not going to do that. Today we're going to be working with 32 by 32 pixel art sprites. So if we go to, there should be an option on all of your softwares where you can go to like the grid settings. I know in Pixiv, as another example, let's see. Piskel, I should say. If you're using something like Piskel or one of these other applications, it's going to be in a different location, which is going to be over here on the right side. It's usually on the right side for some of these other ones, or it's going to be at the top, and it's going to be probably resize, right? So we got this little resize icon, and then you want to put it in the middle, and then just 300 by 300. So, all right. And I'm going to stop periodically, and I'm going to come around if anybody has any problems or needs help with stuff. So once you've got a 300 by 300 canvas and you've got your grid, right? So in Piskel, grid would be something like, you should be able to find it usually at the top of your settings in your app if you're not using Piskel, stuff like that. And it's not totally required. It's just going to help out for this next part. So grid settings, the width is going to be 32 and the height is going to be 32. And when we do that, we should get a grid here. And it's hard to see, so I'm going to change the background really quick. To do that, you do layer, a new layer, and then in Sprite, you do background from layer. Okay. If you don't have a checkered background or it's easy for you to see, you don't have to do this. This is just nice for me personally and everybody, so you can see the grid more clearly. Okay, so moving back on, we're going to go back to our first layer, and we're just going to start drawing some stuff. So the first rule when drawing pixel art is to figure out what is the smallest detail you want to convey and then try to draw it. And if you can't draw that small detail, then you need bigger sprites. For example, we're going to be drawing the game that we're trying to work on, which is I'm trying to stop the pizza guy from delivering pizza, right? So what do we have? We've got a car that the pizza guy is going to come in. We've got the buildings around the town. We've got the streets. And we've got the pizza guy, and we've got the player character who's going to be running around placing traps. So the smallest things are the player character and the traps. And with 32 pixels per tile, that's not a lot to work with. So because we're not going to be doing any animation for right now, I think the easiest way to represent the player character is going to be some sort of an icon for right now. So we're just going to draw the player icon, which is going to be something like something really simple, just for right now. So we'll go to like our circle tool. So you should have some sort of circular tool. You can either do fill ellipse or you can do an empty ellipse. and you can draw it. Oops, I'm on the wrong size ellipse. You do it 1 pixel width. We're just going to draw something like this. Let's make it only about, well, about this big. And then we're going to add the arrow pointing to where the player would be. So maybe the line tool down, or you can just draw this by hand. And pixel art is very much trial and error. So something like this will work. If you want, you can also fill in, make this continuous, fill in the head. So something like that, just for right now. So that's going to be our player. I know it's not super exciting, but hopefully when we get to some of this more complicated stuff and the buildings and stuff like that, it will get a little bit more enticing and exciting. So this is our player icon. Now we're going to draw one of the bigger things, which is a building. And I think the idea that we had as the exec team was to have kind of like a downtown area with like cities and buildings and you know, skyscrapers, stuff that you would find in like a big city. So let's just draw a skyscraper. So the problem with a skyscraper is that they're really tall, right? And because they are really tall, they're actually going to have to go over 2 sprites. So to draw a skyscraper really easily, we're just going to take the rectangular tool, and we're just going to place it down like this, over 2 grid spaces. All right, and then we're going to just add some depth to it. So we're going to add a roof. And to do that, maybe take like a darker color, darker shade of gray, and just put it like that. All right, so this is going over 3 grid spaces. Let me move it down real quick. All right, that's pretty tall. Maybe shrink it a little bit. All right, so this is kind of just the first step in adding the base. Now we're just going to add a little bit of detail. We're not going to go nuts. Throw a couple windows on here. That's a little bit big. Let's do like this. That should be a good size. There's some really helpful tools for specifically Aseprite, but you can use this with most pixel art softwares. So you're going to want to draw this window a lot of times. It's going to be a pain to just keep drawing the tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to find a tool that we can select it with, and then we can just copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. So for Aseprite, we got a couple tools here. We got rectangular marquette tool, marquee, I don't know how to say that. We got a circular tool, a lasso, and the magic wand. Magic wand is super nice for really simple stuff like this because the magic wand just, you click on it and boom, it just selected that for you. For Aseprite, if you're using Aseprite along with me and you hold the, actually I'm on Mac and everybody's using Windows. Well, if you're on Mac, use Control. If you're not on Mac, copy and paste. So Control C, I believe it would be, and then Control V to paste. And then you just kind of move it over a couple. And just keep placing these over the first row. Okay, so that worked out really well. And then we can just kind of select all of these with Magic Wand by holding Shift while we're clicking on them. And then hold Control. And we can kind of drag them up. Do stuff like this. Okay, so that pretty much worked out pretty well. Might want to add like a little doorway or something at the bottom. Let's shift this up a little bit by selecting it with the rectangular selection tool. Shift it up. Then we can take the bottom, select it with the selection tool, and then we can just drag this up a couple and then just carve out a doorway. And that's good enough right now because we need to keep moving and we need to make a ton more buildings. All right, so that's one of them. But now let's say we want to make like a wider building, right? So we can just select a chunk of this building and then we can either use the control trick or we can copy and paste it and then grab it, move it down here like so. And then we just keep grabbing pieces of it and building out buildings, right? Grab this again, make sure it lines up. Maybe add some doors to it. Something like this. All right, so we got 2 buildings now. These are pretty simple. You can keep doing this. You can stack buildings on top of each other. This is what I'm going to do for just right now. We need a couple other buildings really quickly. So let's make the player's house. So let's do a vote really quick. Does the player live in an apartment building in the city, or do they live in like a house on the outskirts of town, like your typical suburban home? All right, so starting off, who wants the player to live in an apartment? Raise your hand. You got 1, 2, 3. Who wants the person to live in like a stereotypical suburban home? All right, stereotypical suburban home. So he lives on the outskirts of the city. So let's draw that. So let's just make like a different color than the buildings, like a tan color. And we'll just place this here like so. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a different color for the roofing. It could be whatever color you want. We're just going to make another rectangle over the top. Something like, I'm going to say this. And this guy's doing pretty well for himself, right? Ripping people off, getting free pizzas and stuff like that. That's how he kind of keeps his income coming in. So he gets a nice garage on the side of the house. So let's just draw another rectangle, a little bit smaller, say about this big. We can change this later. Same trick with the roofing, just another rectangle over the top. If this is down, let's see, 1, 2 pixels here, it's down 2 pixels from the top. So 1, 2. All right. I should probably carve out some windows and doors. So door there. Oh. That. Okay, so it looks pretty good. And then he's got like a garage, so we just cut out a huge chunk here. Oh, that's a pretty tall garage. That's fine for now. So there you go. There you got your house. And we'll add detail to this in a little bit. One other thing to kind of help with the perspective, just for right now, is you can put a line through where the peak of the roof would be. Probably make it darker. So the very tippy top of the roof would be something like here. We'll fix that up later. Okay, so we've got some downtown buildings, we've got the house. The last building we're going to need just for right now, for today's examples, is probably the pizza place. So, out of curiosity, does anybody have a favorite pizza place that they love to go to? Just blurt it out. All right, I heard a bunch of Dominoes. I'm going to Google what a stereotypical Domino's pizza place looks like. Domino's pizza place. I don't know. Domino's pizza place. Let's try that. Google Images. Okay, these look pretty simple. Look pretty similar. Let's just do the first one. It's just it's kind of boring. It's not a Domino's. Is this a Domino's? Can we agree on this being a Domino's? Is it better? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna have to flip back and forth for reference, but it's kind of like a browner color. Let's just do this. It's a big rectangular building. What even is that over there? All right, Forget it. We're doing something simple. That's the Dominoes. That looks like a Dominoes. Okay, so we got like awnings out front. I don't know. They go like here and like a little bit lower, so like a pixel down, I'd say. Oh, it's too big. Whoop. Control Z. That is undo usually on the hotkey and is very convenient. Yeah, most of you programmers will know about that one. Okay, so we got to draw a little domino on it, right? You gotta include the domino on dominoes. All right, color blue. Don't believe I know which way a domino goes from Domino's Pizza? Really? Feel insulted. On color blue. Uh, okay, we'll change the color palettes and everything later. We're just doing really basic stuff for right now. All right. They've got kind of like windows here and here. Oh, it's lopsided. Just shift it over a bit. And then you got to have the front door. Okay, so the Domino's Pizza place is a little weird because the front part of this looks like it sticks up over here a little bit more. So we'll just add same roofing. Great idea. Okay, so the image will be in the ISU GDC workshop chat. Domino's Pizza. All right, should be in the workshop chat if people need to reference the Domino's Pizza image, stock image. Okay, so it's actually really convenient. That's all we're probably gonna do for the Domino's. Just add like a darker roofing for right now. Okay, so that looks pretty good. What else do we need for this game? So we need the ground, and we need roads, and we need a car. So let's quickly throw together some ground. So this is a big part. We need to add a layer because we don't want to draw on the same part as our other images. So what a layer allows us to do is draw underneath all the buildings. So we're going to add a layer. It's going to appear probably at the top of our layer stack. We're going to want to grab it somehow and shift it underneath the others. And now we've got this underneath layer. And normally on the ground we have grass. That's what normally we have. So we'll fill up a whole square with green. And because of the art style we're doing is a little bit more simplistic, we can change it later. We can just kind of do some little grass things, little grass stubs. All right, just a bunch of lines. It's pretty simplistic. Um, okay, so we got kind of our grass tile here. Because it's on the bottom, we can kind of copy and paste it around, but not randomly all over the place like this. We want to take it and place some like here, and then like here, and then we can kind of go ham, grab the whole thing, move this here, grab this whole thing, move it around, copy and paste it, whatever you need to do. My bad, I should have looked at the hotkeys for Windows. So we got this, but obviously it's contrasting pretty badly, so we'll move this down here for right now. It's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so it looks okay. We can always come back to the grass later. We just need something for the time being. On top of it, we're going to start drawing roads. So let's go back to our top layer, our first layer, the same layer that the buildings are on. And we're now going to draw streets running through the middle of these roads. Or the middle of the grass tiles, I should say. All right. So we do something like, how much space does one of these buildings take up? Base of the building takes up, not the whole thing. So we'll put the roads to the middle of them. So in between two tiles, we're going to place a road. And the roads are going to be pretty big because we're going to have to fit a car on them at some point. So they will be about, I'd say this big. So that's about how many pixels? Um, 18 pixels wide, if you need that for reference. On the sides of roads, we normally have something like sidewalks. Those are kind of nice to have. Yeah, I mean we can add the more details, but for right now they're just going to be going nuts on the roads. No street lights, no street signs. Um, so one problem with this is that if we put one of these yellow lines to the road, it's going to be one solid yellow line. And that's because we can't really space it out, because if we try to space it out like this, I don't know how this is going to look. I guess it looks okay. I can pull that off. Another option is you could do the dotted line, right? So you could put stuff through here and then do. It's a double dotted line. I think they're singular dotted lines normally. I don't know. It kind of looks nice. Either way, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want your roads to look like. Um, and we kind of have our bases for most things, but we still need to take these roads and we need to put them on a different angle. So one way to do this with pixel art is you can select one of these, and there's usually a rotation or flipping option. So if I take one of the roads, I kind of take it out for a second here, up under like edit, you should have some sort of rotation feature and you can rotate it a certain amount. You could also grab it by one of the edges and try to rotate it, but sometimes it does not want to click into place. So if you're using something like Sprite or something that's pixel based, sometimes you can change what kind of rotation method, what kind of algorithm it uses. So we've got rot sprite and fast rotation. So fast rotation is kind of like your default rotation that most pixel art editors use, but fast rotation doesn't like rearrange the pixels kind of nicely. So rot sprite kind of does. So we could try that. Nope, doesn't want to click into place. That's annoying. So I'm going to try the old edit. You can always just redraw it. It's a simple shape. But to save time, I'm just going to grab it like this. Okay, so here's a problem. Roads do not work like that. The sidewalk does not go over the road. So we can kind of just grab this with the tool, rip it through the middle, grab this part with some sort of rectangular tool, push it to here, push it to here, maybe clear out the middle. Anyway, roads don't really work like this either, but this looks fine for right now. We might want to fix this up. Intersections are sometimes a little bit more rounded on the edges. It's not like a straight curve, so maybe just take, yeah?
Doesn't the line just stop at the intersection?
Yes. Hold on, give me a second.
I'm telling you, man, this is a long state. I should actually be our floor. And you get more things like you can actually add stoplights.
I guess you could put like a line here, right, that they stop at. Well, I'm working on it, all right? I'm working on it. Give me a second. Okay, well, I'm putting lines down. What do you mean it's only in the right lane? You know, the scary part is I drove here, right? That's the scariest part. Right? Like this. This is why artists use a reference. All right. So normally you look at like an intersection or something. Look at the important part wasn't to make the intersection. It was just to show that you could rearrange the roads. All right. So everybody gets an idea. That looks horrible, by the way. We'll fix that later. Okay. So the last thing I want to do is put a car down. So man, we're running out of space and time. So we're gonna make a new layer because we want to put the car over the road so we can see how big the car would be in respect to one of the lanes of the road. So we're gonna create another new layer if we can, and that's gonna appear on the top of our layer stack. So that's the closest. So that's gonna be above everything that we're drawing. And now we're gonna go to our road and we're gonna try to cram a car onto this road. So maybe a simple car would be something like, I guess the roof would be here. Move this up a little bit. It's going to be a pretty boxy car because we are working with pixels. And this pixel resolution is really tiny. I know during the exec meeting we talked about doing like a really small pixel ratio to make it easier, but I think I shot myself in the foot a little bit here. Okay, that's not terrible. Hood of the car. Trunk of the car doesn't look too big. All right, don't forget about the lighting and the shading. So we're going to do a little bit darker shade of red here. Maybe round out the car a little bit. Whoop. Looks a little weird. We're going to roll with it. Tiny, yeah, little tiny wheels. Potentially. Anyway, not going to go crazy with the detail for right now. Something that's always nice to do is keep things consistent, especially color palette wise. We're going to grab the same color blue, And we're gonna throw that on inside the windshields. Okay. But we still got to draw the car in other angles, right? Because it's not going to just be driving um, straight one direction the entire game. Obviously, if we're going the other direction, we can just grab it and then we can just flip it horizontally. So Shift H is usually the hotkey for that. Boom, got a car going another way. All right, they're just all over the place. This guy's on the wrong side of the road. This guy's driving parallel. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about these people. All right, so now we got to draw this car from directly coming downwards and directly going upwards, and it's a little bit more complicated because we drew it from the side, right? So how do we translate this to make it look good? That's a really good question to ask. So the first thing I usually do when I do something like this is I grab it and I do the rotation trick. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And obviously it doesn't look right, right? It's still at an angle. That look really weird to see driving past. So we're going to grab the top of the car because we know that's how big the top of the car is. And we're going to put it here because we know it's going to be consistently the same. Now we're going to grab the back of the car up to the window. And that's going to go here. And the window is about 2 pixels apart. So we're going to try this. It's not going to turn out the way we want it to, by the way, but it's just somewhere to start, a baseline, and it's going to be 2 pixels away. Okay. And because the car is kind of on an angle here, we're going to want to maybe stretch this out a bit by 2 pixels or so. Stretch the back out. And we'll start adding the details, but we can't do that. So this car, it looks like it's at this angle of about 2 pixels, I believe. So I think the back end would be underneath the back by like 2. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying the car's at a bit of an angle coming towards the camera. So we're going to shift the back end, even if it's 2 pixels technically away, it'd be 2 pixels back like this. And the front end of the car would be up maybe like this. No. This is the part where my brain doesn't really get it, and I have to just mess around for a little while until something clicks and it looks good. So maybe to help myself out, we want to see the front windshield. That's really important. The front windshield is always going to be the same size. We don't want to see the back windshield, right? So at least move it here like this. Maybe move the hood up a little bit like that. The front and back hood are going to be the full length. The back trunk doesn't look that, like it should be that big. So it should be like this. We rounded the car off a little bit, so we can try that. Okay, how far apart are the lights? They're 2 pixels apart. So do we have 2 pixels in between? Yes, we do. So we can kind of do that. Worst comes to worst, we can add another pixel in between. Need the front of the car, right? And the grill and stuff like that. Okay. Lights on the car, they go kind of like here and here. What does a car look like? I should be using a car reference, shouldn't I? Can't even remember what a road looks like. I'm trying to draw a car from memory. Yeah, right. Where did I put that? Here we go. Good old Domino's pizza. Domino's delivery car. What does that look like? I forgot to put a little thing on top. Nobody pointed that out. And no, Domino's, we're not going to do the self-driving robots. Maybe. Crummy car. I want to say crappy. Crappy. All right, we're just going to go for it. Crap. There we go. What second result? Okay, that's a weird looking car. So we're gonna have to modify things a little bit. All right, so the back of this car goes to the back of the trunk entirely. So the front is maybe a little bit longer. So we're gonna stretch this out a little bit. Move this one back one. Okay, that's a little bit more like it. Okay, you shouldn't be able to see the back tail lights at all. One more. Move this up a little bit. Okay, so we got two views of the car now. This car is gonna go bye bye. This car is gonna go bye bye. This car is gonna be flipped. All right, now we got a car that draw the car driving away from us, kind of up towards the screen. You could just grab this. So this car is really simple, and that's really nice for us. So we'll just flip it upside down. Um, Actually, come to think of it, we don't even need to flip it. We'll just take this car. We'll swap out the front lights for the back lights, which are just swapping the white pixels to orange pixels. And then we're going to swap this kind of rear view window towards the back of the car, like so. Maybe up a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. So we can add detail to the front of the car. Shading wouldn't be the word only because if we have light source again coming down from above and it's hitting the top and the front of the car equally, you could put kind of like a shadow, like if there's a shadow shining onto it. But it would still be hitting it technically. You could put more shading on the side of the car, maybe like up this part, but you wouldn't want to put it on the hood of the car specifically. So we could try to add something to the front of the car to add detail. So we could say maybe like the line where the hood is. So let's add this. This is still the side of the car. So this would be here, here. So this side as well. All right. All right, the side is a little bit bigger, so we'll add to the roof. Round the roof off a little bit. Yeah, what's up? In the free version? It should be under the layers icon. Whoop.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
Huh. Okay. So we're gonna have our light source come from this side because we need to add more detail. Normally I was gonna wait to do this later, but we're just gonna have it come from the right upper side of the screen. So that means that's not going to change anything either. Okay. So this can be like this. This can be like this. Guess we can add some shadow here. Hmm. Unfortunately, that's the downside to having a pixel art style like this. Um, you can't fit in that much detail. There are ways to work around it, but I think the only thing you could probably do here is maybe change the hood color to a different color. So we're gonna say he has like the Dominoes maybe logo on the hood. So we're gonna make this a little darker. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. You can add details. You can add all sorts of stuff like this. Um, Normally, you do the details at the very last step. That's why I was kind of holding off for it. But we obviously do need it here. So this is a perfectly good time to add it. So that'll work. This will work. All right, and the cars are a little bit longer. So, okay, so we could draw the car at diagonals, but I don't think we're going to need to for right now. That's something you could try on your own if you would like to. So we've got our cars, we've got streets, we've got grass, we've got buildings, we've got the Domino's place, and we've got our person indicator. Um, so the pixel art so far has been pretty simple. It's been like, I don't know, four different colors per palette per object, tops, um, and it's been pretty simplified just to kind of get like an idea of everything. Something I should probably add really quickly. You are all in this room forbidden from ever using this one tool. You ready? You're all forbidden from using the blur tool. All right? Everybody who does pixel art for the first time runs to this tool. They're like, oh, cool, it does the shading for me, right? I have this really cool blue color, right? Like this. And then I'm just going to throw a light source in here that's hitting it like over here. And I'm going to take the blur tool and I'm going to blur it. And like that looks, yeah, but because they're trying to make it look like they're doing all this stuff where they're adding all these pixels of different colors. Never use the blur tool. It's super obvious. People think that they can hide it. I've never seen somebody use the blur tool and be able to hide it successfully. The only time you should be using this in pixel art is if, let's say, I want to see what the like color would be in between shades of white and blue. Then I can take my little pipette tool, lets you choose a color, and I can zoom in. I can say, I want this color here, click on it, and now I have the shade in between white and blue. That's the only time I have ever seen people use it like really well. Um, if somebody would like to show me an example of like a blur tool that is used really well, please show me. I bet it wasn't used with the blur tool. I bet it was just done by hand. Yes. That's not pixel art though. That doesn't count. Maybe in normal art it's good, but okay. Anybody have any questions? Anything? Any help with the tools? Yep. I'll come over.